Shalom friends, Aaron here. Hopefully you can hear me. I was looking for a quiet place to make this video, but I needed a quiet place and a bright place, and I just felt like finding a place I could sit outside. So along one of these busier roads near me, there's a sidewalk that nobody uses, and they've got art, like life-size pieces of art. There's a tree over here with butterflies on it. I'm actually sitting under something that almost looks like you're inside a whale with bones or something. Anyway, it's bright over here. So we posted a bunch of videos that I did talking about our experience with Madeline, our 9-year-old daughter, who went into the hospital and spent a few days there. And it's long. I did 11 videos, a half an hour, 40 plus minutes long, but I wanted to do that while it was fresh in my mind and kind of let all the emotions come out and tell the story in great detail if anybody didn't want to hear it. The other thing I also decided I wanted to do was to make sure that we had Teresa tell the story from her perspective. Now, I was the one who was in the hospital basically the entire time, but there was some experiences that were unique for Teresa in terms of having conversations with a doctor, and then just from her point of view, what it was like. And she did that, and I've been meaning to put that video up, but her video is not very detailed, and what I wanted to do was make a shorter video. Now this might be an hour long, I hope it won't be. I'll do it as quickly as I can. That runs down the story in a much more condensed way, and then have that posted, and then put Teresa's video up. So we are, I'll just tell you, people who take it very seriously, our responsibility to be parents and keep our children healthy. And, you know, on a real simple level, of course, that means that we intend to feed them well. I mean, we don't eat almost any added sugar. We really very little, other than on special occasions. But, you know, even then, you know, we're using syrup, or we're using organic cane sugar. On rare occasions we use xylitol, and that's not like sugar. It doesn't spike your blood sugar. We don't eat processed foods pretty much at all. Yeah, so no high fructose corn syrup. We avoid dyes, and we don't drink sugary drinks at all. We drink lots of good clean water. We eat lots of fruits and vegetables. We do eat meat. We're not vegetarians or vegans, but we don't eat a lot of meat. We especially don't eat a lot of red meat, and we eat good clean meat. So we spend more money for our meat so that we have good clean meat to eat. Beyond that, of course, there are other things that are to be taken into account when you're considering health. And you know, one of the reasons we homeschool our children, you know, if you've never listened to any of our videos, if you don't know anything about who we are, not paid attention to our channel, we are, my wife and I, married for going on 15 years. We have 10 children together, aged, you know, a little over a year to 13 and a half. And there are no twins or triplets in there. Now, we are a homeschooling family. We've been homeschooling since our son was old enough to go to school, our oldest one. Now, we have different reasons for that, but for this video, I'd like to say that part of the reason we do homeschool, and one of the benefits of homeschooling, is that we have a great deal of control over what our children are exposed to. And, you know, by that, first of all, I mean, look, kids get bullied, there's peer pressure, there's cliques. You know, kids are under pressure to fit in and not necessarily be who they are. And certainly kids do get picked on. Ugly things are said to them. You know, we don't tolerate our children speaking to each other in ugly ways, putting each other down. Always we have the opportunity to constantly encourage them to build each other up and be encouraging to each other. And I think that goes a long way. It can go a long way toward children being healthy, emotionally, mentally, having self-confidence and self-assurance. So there's that, and then we protect them from things. Certainly they have plenty of opportunities to interact with people, but when you consider, like, for example, kids being in school, and spending a lot of time that's not supervised with their peers, because they're not supervised in hallways, they're not supervised at lunch, they're not supervised standing in line to do something in gym class, and they're talking to their peers. And you know, you do have kids that are around your children that are in abusive homes. There's children that are not supervised in terms of what they're watching, and they're watching violence, and they're watching sexual content, all sorts of things that they're not ready to handle. And then they talk about those things. And then they're exposing your children to those things before you've had an opportunity to speak to them. And so we understand, and you can disagree, but we understand that it's our responsibility to also protect our children in that way. And so we take that seriously. So, all of that I said because I want to tell you that our 9-year-old daughter Madeline is very healthy. She is, you know, everything that our pediatrician has ever seen from her is that she's super healthy. She got a great growth chart, track. She's never displayed any illness or developmental issues. She's learning on pace without any difficulty. She's physically active. She's a good climber. She climbs a tree. She can climb a climbing rope that's 15 feet high. She could rock climb. She's a great bike rider. She practices, she trains in karate. And she is a well-rounded, she's a sweet, selfless, helpful, thoughtful girl. So this has gone back beginning of October, I guess now. Beginning of October. It's been a little while since it happened. I don't care to remember exactly when. But leading up to the day that this all began for us with her and her hospital stay, which was on a Friday, Madeline had headaches. And when I say headaches, Teresa and I remember three headaches that she had. And we figure it kind of averaged out to be at one time each week, one day, she had a headache. And it wasn't an all-day thing or something totally debilitating, but it was a situation where, like, usually in the evening, maybe always in the evening, she'd complain about having a headache, go upstairs, relax for a while, come back downstairs, and join us for whatever our activities were, and then be normal the next day. And so we didn't really think a whole lot about it, especially because they were pretty spaced out. Headaches are not normal for us. In fact, there were times when we'd maybe have some more headaches. I would, in particular, when we were still eating wheat gluten, which I'm pretty sure I'm at least allergic to. And that contributed to my sinus issues. Maybe there were some other people in the house who had sinus issues and would maybe have some sinus headaches once in a while. But at least for the last couple of years for sure, and probably always, headaches were not an issue for anybody else, except possibly me. So it was strange, but again, we didn't think a lot about it. So this Friday, Madeline started complaining to Teresa, her mom, about having a headache, probably in the very early afternoon. Now, Teresa had her finish some chores she was doing, and then really kind of took notice that, because she didn't really complain a lot, and Teresa was feeling guilty that she had her finish her chores, but, you know, I think her headache got worse, and after cleanup time, I think they were taking a break from schoolwork that day. And so when it was time for the kids to go outside and have their free time, they get about an hour in the afternoon to go outside. Madeline didn't go out. And so Teresa really started taking notice then and let me know, texting me while I was working, that Madeline wasn't feeling well. So I got home, I don't know, after 5, quarter to 6, something like that. And Madeline had just gone inside after laying down for a while inside in the living room to go use the restroom. And Teresa told me that shortly before that, Madeline had said she really felt bad, was really, really feeling bad. So Teresa said, hey, Madeline just went in to use the bathroom, maybe you should check on her. So I went right in to check on her, knocked on the door, she didn't open it. When I opened the door, I found her lying on the floor, and I won't get into detail here, but she was lying on the floor. There was vomit in her hair, looked like she'd been throwing up in the toilet, maybe sat on the toilet, threw up next to the toilet, and then I found her lying on the floor. I wasn't sure if she'd fallen down or just laid there. But I can't say she was unresponsive in the way that people would think about it. I feel like she wasn't unconscious. Her eyes were open, she was awake, but I could not get her to answer me, to look at me in the eyes, to talk to me. She did make sounds, grunts, groans, all kinds of things like that. Nothing that even resembled a word. And she kept fighting to stay laying down on the ground in the fetal position, and I couldn't get her into a different position at all. I just couldn't do it. In fact, she was worse than dead weight trying to pick her up, because she was literally like clawing to stay down on the floor, lying down sort of on her side. So after a few moments of trying to get her to respond to me, I decided I'm just going to take her upstairs and get this vomit cleaned off of her and then decide what to do. So I got her into the bathroom, got her cleaned up, which was hard. She had really had a mess on her. And then Teresa came upstairs and helped me get Madeline dressed. And we talked to her, tried to get her to answer, tried to get her to respond in any way. Squeeze our hand, can you hear us? Can you shake your head, nod your head, whatever. Nothing at all. Totally blank. And fighting to stay in that fetal position. She threw up again. We had to clean her again and, you know, change some of her clothes again. You know, Teresa and I talked about how we felt like, well, we knew we had to take her to the hospital, but now this isn't like some 10-minute long conversation or process. We decided pretty quickly that we were obviously going to take her to the hospital because we needed to do so. We couldn't help her, because, and most especially because we had no idea what was wrong with her. So for a minute or so, we talked about it and we prayed for her, prayed over her, and decided, of course, that she would go to the hospital. But the reason why that was a question for us is because of two reasons, really. Number one, we know that when we take our children to the hospital, we sign consent forms. And if you read that stuff, and I think a lot of people don't, which is surprising to us, but if you read that stuff, you know, you're signing away your rights as a parent to make decisions. And they say that you're not, but on the most important level you are, and in the way that if a doctor says that your child needs a particular kind of care, and you have a real serious philosophical disagreement with that, if you think that what they say your child needs for care is not what you want for them, then they can force you to have that treatment done by calling family services, child protection services, whatever it is called in your state. And what the doctor says your child needs is, you know, it carries more weight than what you have to say as a parent. That's just the way that is. And then even if you have certain rights that you could exercise and push toward, you can really have a difficult time in the hospital if you've got to pick your battles, I guess. So we understand that, and being people who try to live as holistically as we do. Look, we're not anti-medicine or anti-science or anything like that. You know, there are a place for pharmaceuticals. There's a place for certain medical treatments, of course, but we also understand that we can, perfectly so, no, of course not, because there's just too many things against us, but we can do a pretty good job of seriously lessening our chances of ending up with disease. Can we fully prevent disease? Of course not, but we can go a long way toward preventing disease and even healing our body from things that typically people would expect you need medical intervention for, with your diet, with the way you take care of yourself. And so I think it's understandable, at least from what I'm telling you, that you can imagine there are some things that doctors may want to do in a hospital that we wouldn't approve of. But, you know, we might not have any choice. And the other thing is, we are a family that has 10 children. And we meet lots of people who appreciate our family, lots of people who are indifferent, lots of people who are curious, and occasionally people who are antagonistic because of the size of our family. You know, we don't watch television in our family, but we are keenly aware, to a small degree anyway, that anytime you hear about a big family in the news, if it's not somebody on a reality TV show, it's probably going to be a story about some terrible things that were happening. A family of 10 here, and this is how the children were treated. And news, quote unquote, is just sensationalized stories to sell advertisements for commercials or whatever. And so, you know, they're looking for those sensational stories that really get people paying attention and not worried about telling the truth. There aren't a lot of families that are large families like us that have any interest in being in a reality show, that act or seem anything like a reality show family, because of course reality shows are not reality. And certainly very few of them, in our experience that we've ever met, are anything like the stories you hear about in the news. But there is, with some people, a stigma that comes along with being a family with so many children, homeschooling, and then all the other things that are different about us. You know, we believe in the scriptures, so we're religious according to others, I suppose. And yeah, you know, we don't watch TV, we don't eat donuts. We're different. So for all of human history, the group that was prominent, whatever it is you're talking about, race, religion, socioeconomic status, not understanding those that are different, and there will be some who will be afraid of what's different, judge harshly what's different, persecute those who are different. And so we just know that's the reality that we may face. So it was faster for me to just drive her to the hospital because we lived just down the road from a hospital. No children's department in that hospital, but wanted to get her there as soon as possible. Waiting for the ambulance to come and then take her. I could just get her there in a hurry. So put her in the van, took her to the hospital, brought our oldest son with me just in case I needed any help. I didn't, thankfully, really. A little bit of help. He was helpful, but I didn't need him a ton. Madeline threw up as soon as I got her out of the van. And then once we got into the emergency room and we were not seeing any improvement with her and realizing things are going to really take a while, called Teresa, kind of let her know what was going on, at the point where we were told that they were going to transfer her to the children's hospital nearby, and told her to come and get Josiah, our oldest son, so she did. While Madeline was there, she got super upset lying on the hospital bed, very, very upset, and tried to crawl off the bed. Would have fallen off the bed if I weren't there to hold her. Not making any words, just sounds, grunts, groans, like she could not speak a language. And then she, I couldn't calm her down until finally she just sort of relaxed and peed her pants. And then I was so upset thinking about that. She was so upset because she's a big girl and obviously doesn't go to the bathroom in her pants. And she was struggling to go. She didn't know where to go. She didn't know where she was, but struggling to get to the bathroom somehow, and holding it until she literally couldn't hold it anymore. So upset, and then peed herself, and then laid back down. So they got her a gown, took her out of her clothes that she was wearing that were peed on, threw them away, I guess. And then they ended up sending her in for a CAT scan. Once we got her in to the CAT scan room, moving her like that, so every time we moved her, she'd throw up. She threw up again. And she had the CAT scan, and everything looked good on the CAT scan. And then they brought her back to the room, and we were kind of waiting for the transfer papers to go through, and they were drawing blood to do labs. And one of the things they were going to do next was do a lumbar puncture, essentially take some fluid out of the spine, because they wanted to see if she was showing any signs of a viral encephalitis or meningital bacterial encephalitis causing swelling in her brain, which they probably would see on the CAT scan some evidence of that, but the CAT scan's not necessarily going to show it. And in the fluid they would see T cells or possibly find viral cultures. So they were going to do that, which is not something that I would have volunteered to do unless I absolutely had to do it. So I was not looking forward to them doing that for her. But before that happened, while we were waiting for the transfer at Children's, they came in and said that one of the test results came back, and it showed something that could really be the answer as to why she was in what they called her altered mental state. And that was that her sodium level was really low, dangerously low. And started asking questions about whether or not she drank too much water, or in a nutshell, it's hyponatremia, and that's not that you have low sodium. You could have low sodium and cause that problem, or you could have a sodium level's fine, but you drink too much water, and then it dilutes the sodium in your system, and your cellular function isn't your cells are not functioning properly. You need electrolytes for your electrical signals in your cells and things. But anytime you hear about somebody having hyponatremia, it's oftentimes like a high school kid who plays football and he drank, 3 or 4 gallons of fluid in like an hour or two. It's something really extreme, and it's really rare. It's not something super common. So anyway, we knew that was no way. That could have been the possibility anyhow, but those were the things they were talking about. So they decided to hold off on doing the lumbar puncture, get her out to Children's. So the ambulance came eventually. I got in the ambulance with her, and they drove us off to Children's Hospital. Now, when we got to Children's Hospital, we got up to the PICU, Pediatric Intensive Care Unit, and then they did not let me go in. They didn't say anything to me prior to that. When we were in the elevator, you could go into the ICU, or you could go the other way toward the family waiting room. And right when they got there, on that floor, and the door opened, and they started wheeling her out. They said, "You can't come in right now. You can come in once we have her settled down." Settled down. These are the actual words they used, which is ridiculous, because this whole time when she was in the other emergency room and the paramedics saw it, that she would not calm down for anybody but me. Now, I don't know if she understood me, how much she really knew was going on, but something just about the presence of her father, maybe the sound of my voice, I could calm her down when nobody else was calming her down. So what a ridiculous thing to say, like, I can come in after you calm her down. And no warning, they spring that on me at the last second that I can't go in. Well, I'll just say this here, even though it's not necessarily chronological. I know now, I mean, I haven't seen the evidence of it. Jump way ahead, when we were discharged, they gave me papers that I didn't look at right away, telling me that everything that they did, all of her treatment, that was all listed on there. None of it was listed on there. I mean, none of it. Now, I have to jump through some hoops to get those records, and I believe I will. I just haven't done it yet. Partly, I don't think I was emotionally ready to read what I think I'm going to read on there. But I know at that point that they weren't telling me the truth. I don't know that then, I know that now. That they weren't telling me the truth, that they were bringing in there to examine her and not want me to be there. So they, at the very least, did a physical exam where they looked at her body to see if she had any bruising or signs that she had been hurt, abused physically. And something that still makes me upset when I think about it now is the very real suspicion that I have that they possibly checked her to see if she'd been sexually assaulted. Although there had been no reason for them to suspect anything like that, especially we know her sodium level is too low, tests too low, and we know that that can be the reason for her altered mental state. She doesn't have any bruises that you can see from just this hospital nightgown. At that point, now the kids always have bruises on their knees or something from falling down, riding their bikes or whatever. This time, she didn't have any bruises anywhere, I don't think. Not even on her shins, you know. And then if they did do a physical exam and looked at her to see that there was no signs of anything on her, if they did in fact examine her further, then I mean, they molested her as far as I'm concerned. I'll say now that I don't have any fears about what's to come for her with this, but I do have concerns that someday she'll remember something. I've talked to her since this all happened, and she says she doesn't remember anything from that Friday, and she doesn't remember anything from Sunday and Saturday, and then the Sunday is a blur. It's not until that Monday that followed that she actually has memories. But she wasn't unconscious at all at any point. And so what I'm telling you now and what I'm going to tell you, does she remember? What will she remember? I don't know. But I've told her that if she ever has some bad dream and she wonders if it just seems too real, if she needs to ask if something like that might have actually happened to her, that she should ask, and she should ask her mom, talk to me about it, and I can let her know. At 9 years old, I'm not telling her about her experience right now. I figure by the time she's like close to an adolescent, I'll probably sit down, her and her mom and I, and have a conversation with her about what happened. I'm hoping that if she's ever going to remember it, she won't remember it until then, and maybe won't remember it ever, and then we'll just get to tell her a little bit about what we think so that if she ever does have a memory, she's prepared for it. Anyway, I called Teresa right away because I was very upset that they wouldn't let me in, and it made no sense to me. I was very angry, very upset. And you know, at some point in this process, I had told her, I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to leave you. And they made me leave her. And you know, as a dad, that was hard. And for Teresa, it's a no-brainer for her that I'm going to the hospital when there's emergencies, because it's too hard for her. And she'll tell you that in her video. She needs me to be there, you know, because as traumatizing as it is for me, it's more traumatizing for her. And I handle it better. She takes them to well visits and dentist visits, but man, if somebody needs stitches or has to go to the hospital because they're not well, then or the doctor or whatever, that's my job. It's always been like that. We had a little boy who was born with a little heart condition, and he spent a few weeks in the NICU, and Teresa spent very little time. She came to visit him, but she didn't stay up there with him. I stayed up there with him all the time because it was just too much for her. That was hard. That was hard. This was harder, but that was hard. Anyhow, it was very upsetting for her as well to know that they wouldn't let me in. So finally decided I'm going to go ahead and ring the bell, have them open the door, because you got to buzz in. You don't just walk into the ICU. And they let me in, and I went to the desk and I said, look, I've been standing out here for 25 minutes. I was told that when they calm my daughter down, they'll let me in, they'll call me, but they're not going to calm her down. Like, I don't know why I'm out here. Can I please go be with her? And they said, oh, real nonchalantly, yeah, we were just about to call you. Yeah, you were just about to call me. So I got down to the room where she was, and she was up on her knees on the bed and totally disoriented. This is the theme, okay? The rest of this Friday, all day the next day, totally disoriented, not using any words whatsoever, kind of combative, fighting with people all the time, and a fall risk. You know, she could fall out of her bed. Two nurses standing there, kind of like goalies, trying to make sure she doesn't fall out of the bed. And I noticed that there were straps on the bed that were out, and I asked them if they strapped her down. And I think the one nurse said something about how they were going to, and the other said, yeah, they did. So I believe they did strap her down. She was unstrapped when I got there, so why did they strap her down and now she's up? I believe they strapped her down to examine her. Oh, what a horrible thing they did to her for no reason. Honestly, every time I consider it, it just makes me so angry now. I don't know that then. I went right to her, hugged her, held her, and laid down on the bed with her, because she wanted to lie back down after she urinated again, which is basically she was up on her hands and knees, and she was trying to get up because she wanted to pee. She got up all the way up on her knees like she was trying to get out of the bed, and they were trying to stop her. And she, at that point, maybe had like a pull-up on her, a diaper or something. And they didn't hold anything. She peed. And then once they got her clean again, changed her, got the bed cleaned up, she laid back down. And yeah, I just laid there and held my little girl. So I'm going to stop this here, and I'm going to go ahead and post this one, and then I'm going to try to wrap it up in a half an hour. Pick it up from there and tell you the rest of the story. So we're in the PICU. I have no idea what's wrong with my little girl at this point.